In the far reaches of Veltrax Prime, where storms whisper in ancient codes and predators stalk in silence, one soldier makes an impossible choice. Ronan Vale wasn't meant to survive. He certainly wasn't meant to carry the future of two species on his back. But when war burns away everything else, sometimes what's left is exactly what the universe needs. One broken man, one wounded child, and the fragile thread that might bind two worlds. Wounded human soldier carries alien child through war zone. Mother offers sacred life debt bond. The impact of the ionized antimatter bolt threw Ronan Vale against the tree trunk with bone-crushing force. White-hot pain lanced through his side as he slid to the ground, the charred edges of his armor still smoking. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the dense forest of Veltrax Prime. Now fading as the ambush pushed his unit farther away, Diaz Rodriguez copy. Ronan barked into his comms, met only with static blood seeped between his fingers as he pressed against the wound below his ribs. The tactical display inside his helmet flickered, then died completely. Ronan forced himself to move each step, sending waves of agony through his body. The mission brief had claimed this was a standard peacekeeping patrol, nothing standard about a calculated ambush with heavy artillery. Rain began to fall, hissing against the superheated sections of his armor. Ronan stumbled forward, combat instincts guiding him toward higher ground. After 20 minutes of painful progress, he spotted a narrow opening in the rock face ahead. A cave entrance partially hidden by the planet's strange phosphorescent vegetation. The cave was deeper than it appeared from outside, tunneling back into darkness. Ronan activated his emergency light and swept the beam across the interior. His blood ran cold. A pair of reflective eyes stared back at him from the shadows. Ronan's hand moved instinctively to his pulse caster. The eyes blinked, followed by a soft whimper. Not a predator, a child, a Virulon child. She couldn't have been more than a toddler by human standards with delicate fox-like features and light blue fur. Her ears, nearly as long as her head, pressed flat in fear. A darker stain matted the fur of her left leg. "Hey there, Ronan," whispered, holstering his weapon and raising his palms. His translator was offline, with the rest of his systems leaving him with only the handful of Virellan phrases from his cultural briefing. "No harm, safe." The child scrambled back against the cave wall, limping heavily. Ronan recognized the universal body language of a trapped, wounded animal. "I'm a medic," Ronan said, tapping the Red Cross insignia on his shoulder plate. He slowly removed his medical kit from his belt movements, deliberate and non-threatening. I can help. Pain flared in his side as he knelt, reminding him of his own predicament. Basic field medicine first. He injected a combat stimulant and antibiotic cocktail, then applied a pressure seal to his wound. It would buy him time, nothing more. The child watched his every move, curiosity gradually replacing fear. When Ronan extended an antiseptic wipe toward her injured leg, she flinched but didn't retreat further. "Brave kid," Ronan murmured gently, cleaning the wound, a deep laceration but not life-threatening. The little girl's eyes widened at the cooling sensation of the medical gel he applied next. Ronan's translator suddenly sputtered to life, catching fragments of distant Virellan communications, military bands, search patterns. They were looking for someone. The child's ears perked up at the sounds. "Mama," she said the word universal enough that Ronan understood. "Your mother's looking for you," Ronan asked, securing a bandage around her small leg. Lightning forked across the sky outside, followed by thunderous artillery. Both human and Virellan forces were still engaged with the cave located squarely between their lines. The tactical situation clarified in Ronan's mind. This child was lost in an active combat zone, separated from her people. Every minute increased the chance of her being killed in the crossfire or by the planet's predators. Ronan checked his wound the seal was holding, but the pain was intensifying. He had maybe a day before infection set in beyond what his combat stims could manage. "Looks like we're both in trouble, kid," Ronan said. He removed his damaged tactical vest and fashioned a makeshift carrier from it. "How about we find your people together?" The child tilted her head. not understanding his words but seeming to grasp his intention. Ronan winced as he carefully lifted her into the carrier. "My name's Ronan," he said, pointing to himself. The child merely blinked, too young to speak. A small identification band around her tiny wrist caught Ronan's attention. He squinted at the Virellan glyphs illuminated by his light, making out what must be her name, Auren Kai. "I'll get you home." "Auren Kai," Ronan said, securing her against his less damaged side. "Your mother must be worried sick." As they emerged from the cave into the alien twilight, Ronan knew he was making a decision that violated protocol and possibly crossed into treason. A human soldier aiding a Virellan, even a child, would be viewed as betrayal by hardliners on both sides. But as the small weight settled against him, Ronan felt something he hadn't experienced since before the war: certainty. Whatever came next, he was doing the right thing. The forest of Veltrax Prime came alive with the first light of dawn. Bioluminescent flora dimmed as twin suns crested the horizon, casting the landscape in a surreal amber glow. Ronan had traveled through the night, stopping only when necessary to rest his aching body and check on Auren Kai. The small Virellan child had remained surprisingly quiet occasionally, whimpering when Ronan's movements jostled her injured leg. Her oversized eyes studied everything from the strange human carrying her to the familiar wilderness around them. Ronan paused at the edge of a clearing, using a fallen log for support as he lowered himself to check his wound. The pressure seal had darkened ominously, his body heat and exertion accelerating the spread of infection beneath it. "Not good," he muttered, injecting another dose of antibiotics from his rapidly depleting supply. He broke open an emergency ration pack, the hermetically sealed protein bar tasteless but necessary. Auren Kai's nose twitched at the scent. Her small stomach growled audibly. "Hungry, huh?" Ronan broke off a tiny piece, hesitating. "I have no idea if this will poison you." Auren Kai's tiny clawed hand reached for the food with unmistakable intent. Ronan pulled back the morsel. "Hold on, let me think this through." His field manual offered little guidance on Virellan dietary needs. What he did remember was their carnivorous tendencies and protein requirements. The emergency ration was synth protein designed to be hypoallergenic. It might work. "Here," he said, offering the smallest crumb. "Let's see if this agrees with you." Auren Kai snatched it eagerly, stuffing it into her mouth. Ronan watched anxiously for several minutes, relaxing only when no adverse reaction occurred. He broke off a larger piece which disappeared just as quickly. As he prepared to move on, a distinct electronic whine echoed from the north. Dropships, Ronan activated his neurohollow HUD system's remaining functions, the damaged display showing intermittent heat signatures in the distance. "Patrol," he whispered, slipping deeper into the underbrush. The makeshift carrier kept Auren Kai secured against his chest. Her small form now hidden beneath a layer of camouflage fabric torn from his gear. They moved parallel to a stream, using the water's sound to mask their footsteps. Ronan's training kicked in. Stick to natural pathways, avoid broken foliage, minimize trail signs. The extra weight of the child strained his injured body, but her warmth against him provided strange comfort. Midday brought them to a steep embankment overlooking a valley. Ronan surveyed the terrain, identifying the telltale signs of a Virellan settlement approximately 10 kilometers east. A day's journey in his condition, maybe two. Auren Kai suddenly stiffened in the carrier, her ears swiveling backward. Ronan froze. Seconds later, he heard it too. Footsteps, multiple sets moving quickly through the forest behind them. With no time to retreat, Ronan pressed himself against the base of a massive tree, its phosphorescent roots providing minimal cover. He drew his pulsecaster, powering it to stand by. 3 Virellan scouts passed less than 20 meters away, their sleek armor adorned with tribal markings, different from those he'd encountered in battle hunters rather than soldiers. They paused, conferring in low tones, their fox-like ears twitching as they scanned the area. Ronan held his breath, one hand gently covering Auren Kai's mouth. The child seemed to understand the need for silence, remaining perfectly still against him. One scout approached their position, nostrils flaring. Ronan's finger tensed on the trigger, the weight of the choice before him crushing down. If he fired, he'd reveal their position to every patrol in the area. If he didn't, the scout stopped, ears perked toward a sound in the distance. After a tense moment, he rejoined his companions, and the patrol moved away to investigate whatever had caught their attention. Ronan released his breath, holstering his weapon with shaking hands. Oren Kai looked up at him, her large eyes somehow conveying understanding beyond her years. "That was close," Ronan whispered, checking her bandaged leg. The wound was healing well better than his own. As daylight faded, Ronan located a sheltered overhang formed by fallen trees. He gathered what medicinal plants he recognized from his survival training, creating a poultice for his worsening wound. Oren Kai watched intently, then suddenly squirmed from the carrier. Before Ronan could stop her, she crawled a short distance and pawed at a cluster of small blue fungi. "No, don't eat those." Ronan started reaching for her. Oren Kai ignored him, gathering several pieces and crawling back, depositing them at his feet. She pushed them toward his wound with surprising determination. Ronan studied the fungi, recognition dawning. They matched the description of a native Althian species used by the native population for its antibacterial properties. "You're something else, kid," Ronan said, carefully incorporating the fungi into his poultice. The relief was almost immediate as he applied it, the burning sensation in his side diminishing slightly. Under the alien stars, man and child shared an unspoken understanding. Ronan reconfigured the carrier into a small shelter, carefully placing Oren Kai inside, where she promptly curled into a ball, her breathing soft, and even Ronan leaned back, eyes fixed on the unfamiliar constellations tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But for now, they had survived their first day together. Ronan jerked awake to the sound of distant engines. Dawn had barely broken, the forest still shrouded in misty half-light. Oren Kai was already awake, her oversized ears swiveling toward the noise, tiny body trembling. "Multiple search parties," Ronan murmured quickly, gathering their meager supplies. His medical scanner picked up electromagnetic signatures from both directions, human forces to the west, Virelin to the east, both converging on their position. He checked his wound. The fungal poultice had helped, but infection continued its slow spread. The burning sensation had transformed into a disturbing numbness that radiated from the injury site, not a good sign. "Time to move, little one." Ronan secured Oren Kai in the carrier, noticing her leg had almost completely healed. Virelin physiology apparently recovered faster than human, at least one of them was improving. They moved south away from both search patterns, traversing increasingly difficult terrain. The forest gave way to a rocky escarpment riddled with narrow ravines, perfect for staying hidden, treacherous for maintaining speed. By midday, Ronan's strength was failing. Each step required more concentration than the last. Sweat drenched his body despite the cool air fever taking hold. He paused to rest against a boulder, breathing heavily. Oren Kai chirped softly, patting his cheek with her small hand. Her eyes, brilliant azure and disconcertingly intelligent, studied his face with concern. "I'm okay," Ronan lied, forcing himself upright, just catching my breath. A distant howl froze them both. Not mechanical, not human or Virelin. Something native. Ronan recalled the briefing on Veltraxian wildlife. The planet's apex predator, the rakvors hunted in the highland regions. Quadrupedal carnivores with remarkable speed and natural stealth capabilities. The colonists called them shardfang stalkers. Another howl closer this time. Hunting pack. Ronan quickened his pace, ignoring the protest from his body. They needed elevation and defensibility. His eyes scanned the landscape, locking onto a cluster of needle-like rock formations ahead. The first rakvor appeared as they reached the formation's edge, sleek, obsidian-scaled, with multiple eyes arranged in an unsettling asymmetric pattern. It moved with liquid grace, testing the air with a forked tongue. Ronan drew his pulse, Castor the weight unexpectedly heavy in his fever-weakened grip. The plasma charge indicator showed barely enough power for 3 shots. He'd have to make them count. The creature stalked forward, joined by 2 more, emerging from different angles. Classic pack hunting strategy. Hold tight, Ronan whispered to Oren Kai, who burrowed deeper against his chest. The lead Rakvor lunged without warning, covering 20 meters in a heartbeat. Ronan fired the particle discharge, catching it mid-leap, sending it crashing into the rocks. The second shot went wide as he staggered backward. The remaining predators circled more cautiously, communicating through low clicking sounds. Ronan retreated toward a narrow crevice in the rock face, his back to the stone 1 shot left. 2 predators, impossible odds. The Rakvors charged simultaneously. Ronan aimed at the closest one finger, tightening on the trigger. A blinding flash of blue energy streaked past him, striking the creature with devastating force. The second Rakvor leapt toward Ronan's exposed side. He pivoted, using his body to shield Oren Kai, bracing for the impact. Instead, another energy blast caught the predator mid-air, its body convulsing before dropping lifeless mere feet away. Ronan spun around, weapon raised, toward this new threat. A Virelin female stood atop the rock formation. Energy rifles still raised steam rising from its barrel. Her armor bore the insignia of a scout commander, electric blue fur visible beneath her helmet. Their eyes locked across the distance. The Virelin lowered her weapon slightly, head tilting as she noticed the small bundles secured against Ronan's chest. The moment shattered as more howls echoed through the ravine. The Virelin commander gestured sharply toward a path leading upward, then disappeared over the ridge. Ronan hesitated only briefly before following. Enemy or not, she'd saved their lives. More importantly, she'd seen Oren Kai and hadn't immediately fired upon them. That meant something. The path wound treacherously upward. Ronan's weakened state made each step a battle of will. Twice he nearly fell, catching himself at the last moment. Oren Kai remained perfectly still, instinctively minimizing any additional strain. At the summit, Ronan found himself facing not 1 but 5 Virelin scouts' weapons trained on him. Their commander stood at the center, her rifle lowered but ready. Ronan slowly raised one hand, the other still supporting Oren Kai. "I found her abandoned," he said. Though his translator was likely still malfunctioning, "I'm trying to return her to her people." The commander's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed not on Ronan, but on the small child he carried. Oren Kai suddenly stirred her tiny face, emerging from the improvised carrier. She blinked at the Serenians, then made a soft, trilling sound. The commander's stoic expression cracked her sharp features, softening with unmistakable recognition. Oren Kai, the commander's voice was barely audible, her composure slipping for just an instant before the steel returned to her spine. Ronan assessed his situation with clinical detachment. 5 armed Serenians versus 1 wounded human with a depleted pulsecaster and a child to protect not favorable odds. "Lower your weapon, human!" The commander ordered, her translator functioning better than his own. Slowly, Ronan complied, placing his pulsecaster on the rocky ground. "The child needs medical attention," he said, keeping his voice steady. Her leg was injured. The commander approached with predatory grace, each step measured and cautious. Up close, the resemblance between her and Oren Kai was unmistakable. The same electric blue fur, though the commander's was richer in color and marked with distinctive black streaks. Her eyes, sharp as cut sapphires, assessed Ronan with calculating precision. "You will surrender the child," she said, reaching for Oren Kai. Something fiercely protective flared in Ronan's chest. "Your name first." The commander's ears flattened against her skull. "You are in no position to make demands." "Not a demand." Courtesy. Ronan held her gaze. "I've carried her for 2 days. I'd like to know who I'm giving her to." A tense silence stretched between them. The other scouts maintained their aim, fingers hovering near triggers. "Leolith," she finally responded. Commander Leolith Oren Kai chirped excitedly at the familiar voice, tiny hands reaching toward the commander. The pieces clicked into place in Ronan's fever-addled mind. "She's yours," he said. not a question. Leolith's expression remained unreadable. She's Virelin. Ronan carefully loosened the carrier, his movements deliberately slow. She's been very brave. As he transferred Orin Kai into Leolith's waiting arms, the world tilted sideways. The last of Ronan's strength evaporated, his knees buckling beneath him. The rocky ground rushed up to meet him, but unconsciousness claimed him first. Fragments of sensation penetrated the darkness. The hum of engines' voices arguing in Virelin. The distinctive smell of medical antiseptic heat. Unbearable heat consuming him from within. Ronan opened his eyes to a ceiling of interlocking hexagonal panels illuminated by a soft blue glow. He lay on a medical table, restraints securing his wrists and ankles. His combat suit had been removed, leaving him in his base layer. A Virelin medical device hummed as it hovered over his wounded side. The infection has penetrated his bloodstream. A voice stated clinically, "Human physiology is responding poorly to our standard treatments. Try again," came the unmistakable command of Leolith. Ronan turned his head to locate her. She stood at the entrance to the medical bay. Her military posture rigid, Orin Kai was no longer with her. Commander Ronan croaked, his throat painfully dry, the child. Leolith approached, tension evident in every line of her body. "My daughter is recovering well. Your field treatment prevented permanent damage." Relief washed through Ronan Good. Why the question was abrupt, her blue eyes boring into his. "You're a human soldier, our enemy. Why risk your life for a Virelin child?" Ronan considered lying, crafting some tale of strategic advantage. In his delirious state, honesty seemed simpler. She was alone, scared, hurt. He swallowed painfully. It was the right thing to do. "The right thing," Leolith repeated as if testing an unfamiliar concept. "You expect me to believe human morality extends to Virelin children, not human morality just mine." Leolith studied him with newfound intensity. "Your military will consider this treason." Probably, Ronan agreed, the fever making him lightheaded worth it. A tremor ran through his body, the infection asserting itself despite the medical intervention. Ronan closed his eyes against a wave of nausea. "Your condition is deteriorating," Leolith stated, a strange edge to her voice. "Our medications are incompatible with your physiology. My field kit Ronan managed contains human antibiotics." Leolith gestured to a subordinate who retrieved Ronan's equipment from across the room. They administered the remaining doses under Ronan's mumbled instructions. "It won't be enough," Ronan admitted. "Need a proper medical facility." "The nearest human outpost is across active battle lines," Leolith informed him. "Then I guess I've had my last mission." Ronan tried to smile, but his facial muscles wouldn't cooperate. Leolith's communicator chimed. She answered with sharp-clipped Virelin phrases, her expression darkening with each exchange. When she disconnected, her gaze returned to Ronan with renewed suspicion. "Your unit has been reported operating deep in our territory," she said. "Not standard peacekeeping movements. What is their mission?" Ronan's thoughts swam hazily. Colonel Harmon's classified briefing resurfaced in fragmented pieces. Intelligence gathering suspected third-party manipulation evidence of weapon transfers that matched neither human nor Virelin technology. "Not what you think he managed something else happening." Leolith leaned closer, her scent wild and unfamiliar, yet strangely appealing, filling his senses. "What do you know, soldier?" she demanded, Ronan's vision blurred at the edges. The last thing he saw before darkness reclaimed him was the unexpected concern in Commander Leolith's brilliant blue eyes. Ronan awoke to small hands patting his face. His fever had broken, leaving him weak but lucid. Orin Kai sat beside him on the medical bed, her tiny claws gently prodding his cheek with innocent curiosity. The restraints that had secured his wrists were gone. "Hey there," Ronan murmured, voice rough from disuse. "Shouldn't you be with your mother?" But the voice, "She is quite determined." Leolith's voice came from the doorway. She wore lighter armor now, her commander's insignia still prominent. "She refused to leave your side after you stabilized." Ronan carefully sat up, muscles protesting. "How long was I out?" 38 hours. Leolith approached her movements, precise and controlled. Your combat stimulants nearly killed you. The human antibiotics merely slowed the infection. What saved me then? Lilith's ears twitched slightly. Virellin blood filtration. Experimental. The medical team was reluctant to attempt it on a human. You ordered them to try anyway. I did. Her gaze was unreadable. Your life for my daughters seemed a fair exchange. Orenkai chirped happily, climbing onto Ronan's lap with casual familiarity. Her injured leg showed no signs of the previous trauma. Where am I exactly? Ronan asked, noting the room's curved architecture and unusual materials. Forward Command Post Sector 7. Leolith observed his reaction carefully, well within Virellin territory. Ronan processed this information. Your superiors know I'm here. Some. Not all. Her lips tightened. Your presences. A low-pitched alarm suddenly pulsed through the facility. Leolith's posture shifted instantly to combat readiness, ears swiveling toward the sound. Stay here, she commanded, sweeping Leolin into her arms and depositing her in a secured corner alcove. Both of you. The door had barely closed behind her when an explosion rocked the structure. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as emergency lights activated. Ronan's military training took over. He located his gear stacked in a nearby storage unit, quickly donning the cleaned but still damaged armor. His weapons were missing, but his tactical systems had been recharged, now functioning at partial capacity. A second explosion closer this time. The facility's alarm changed pitch. Ronan knelt beside Leolin. I need to help your mother, he explained, though she couldn't understand his words. Stay hidden. The small Virellin child blinked up at him, then deliberately crawled deeper into the alcove, demonstrating more situational awareness than many human children 3 times her age. The corridor outside was chaos. Virellin personnel rushing to defensive positions, smoke billowing from a breached section ahead. Ronan's translator picked up fragments. Unknown attackers, heavy weaponry security perimeter compromised. Ronan moved against the flow of traffic toward the breach. He rounded a corner to find Leolith and 2 guards pinned down by concentrated fire from the damaged entrance. The attackers were neither human nor Virellin. 3 bipedal figures advanced through the smoke, their bodies encased in articulated exoskeletons. Geometric patterns covered their armor, which seemed to absorb energy weapons rather than deflect them. Their faces were hidden behind featureless masks with 3 horizontal slits where eyes should be. Ricari, Leolith hissed, ducking another volley of fire. How did they find us? Ronan slid into cover beside her. You know them arms dealers, they've sold weapons to both sides since the conflict began. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? I ordered you to stay with Lylin. I have combat training, she needs protection. Ronan nodded toward the attackers. Those aren't standard mercenary tactics, that's a capture formation. Leolith's expression shifted from anger to grim understanding. She passed him a pulsecaster, can you still shoot? Well enough. Ronan checked the unfamiliar weapon. What's their objective? Unknown. Leolith fired twice, forcing the Ricari to pause their advance. We're a communication outpost, not a strategic target. Ronan's tactical display flickered, intercepting a fragmented transmission. Alien symbols scrolled across his visor before his translation matrix decoded key phrases. Human specimen. Virellin hybrid research opportunity. Primary target acquired. Cold understanding dawned there after Lylin Leolith's head snapped toward him. What my unit's mission? Ronan said urgently. We weren't just peacekeeping. Intelligence suspected a third party was manipulating the conflict, prolonging the war. We were gathering evidence. The piece is aligned with terrible clarity. His unit's classified mission, the unusual patrol pattern that separated him from his squad, the convenient ambush that left him wounded but alive. They were tracking me, Ronan realized, using me to find her. They knew I'd try to return her to Virellin territory. Leolith's expression hardened. Why target my daughter? She's unique. Half Virellin, half human, isn't she? The revelation emerged from subconscious observations, subtle physical differences. Her unusual resilience, the genetic compatibility that allowed Ronan to share food with her, the first successful hybrid between our species. Shock registered briefly on Leolith's face before a nearby explosion demanded their attention. The Netherian Syndicate were advancing again, systematically eliminating resistance. "We can discuss your disturbing conclusions later," she growled, checking her weapon charge if we survive. A Netherian Syndicate grenade arc toward their position. Ronan lunged forward, catching it midair and hurling it back toward the attackers. The resulting explosion created momentary confusion. "Command Center," Leolith said. "Already moving, we need to activate the facility's defense protocols." They fought their way through the corridors, Ronan covering their flank as Leolith led. Despite his weakened state, combat instincts carried him forward, each shot precisely placed. At the command center entrance, a Netherian Syndicate soldier appeared suddenly from a side passage weapon aimed at Leolith's exposed back. Ronan threw himself forward without hesitation, taking the full impact of the energy blast across his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body as he collapsed against her. "You fool!" Leolith hissed, dragging Ronan behind the reinforced door of the command center. Blood seeped through his armor where the Netherian Syndicate weapon had struck. "Why would you do that?" Ronan winced as she sealed the door security protocols, engaging with a series of mechanical clicks. Instinct, he managed through gritted teeth. Leolith activated the command console, her fingers flying across the alien interface defense systems hummed to life throughout the facility. She turned back to Ronan, eyes narrowing at his wound. "Remove the armor," she ordered. Retrieving a medical kit from a wall compartment, Ronan complied with difficulty, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through his shoulder. The wound was ugly charred flesh surrounding a deep energy burn that had melted through the protective plating. Leolith knelt beside him, her touch unexpectedly gentle as she examined the injury. "The second time you've been wounded protecting something of mine. Keeping score." Ronan attempted humor to distract from the pain. Serenians always do. Her eyes met his, something unreadable flickering within their sapphire depths. "We remember debts." She applied a translucent gel to the wound. The burning sensation immediately diminished, replaced by cool numbness. Ronan's eyes widened in surprise. "Nerve inhibitor." Leolith explained it will prevent pain while the tissue regenerates. "Thanks." Ronan tested his arm, finding the mobility already improved about what I said before the attack. "Lyle's parentage is not your concern." Lyle cut him off sharply, her ears flattening. "If the Vrikari are targeting her specifically, it is." Ronan held her gaze. "I need to understand what I'm fighting for." Tension crackled between them. The distant sounds of combat echoed through the structure as the facility's automated defenses engaged the invaders. Leolith's composure cracked slightly. Her father was a human diplomatic envoy before the war. Her voice carried complex emotions, anger, loss, perhaps regret. When the conflict began, he was recalled to Earth. He didn't know about Leolith, and the Vrikari somehow learned about her existence. Ronan concluded, a living symbol of what they're trying to prevent. "A peace between our species." Leolith finished dressing his wound in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Hybrid births between our species have a success rate of less than 1%. Leolith is unprecedented." "She's perfect," Ronan said simply. Something softened in Leolith's expression. "Yes." The moment stretched between them, interrupted by the facility's communication system crackling to life. A gruff Virellan voice demanded status updates, security protocols, prisoner verification. "Your superiors," Ronan asked. Leolith's expression hardened. "High Command, they've detected the attack?" She hesitated, glancing at Ronan. "If they learn you're here, I'm an enemy combatant." Ronan finished for her war prisoner at best, execution at worst. She nodded tersely. Ronan weighed his options. "Where's Leolith now?" "Secure chamber 3 levels below us. It's where we shelter our young during attacks." Leolith's gaze dropped to the weapon she'd given him, still clutched in his hand. "You could use this opportunity to escape. The northern exit will be minimally guarded during the attack." Ronan placed the weapon on the console between them. Not what I had in mind. Leolith tilted her head, studying him with renewed intensity. What did you have in mind? Human Ronan, he corrected. And I was thinking, we should get your daughter access my unit's intelligence data and figure out how deep this Netherian syndicate manipulation goes. Your unit's data is not accessible from a Virellan facility. Ronan tapped his damaged Neuro-Hollow HUD system. Encrypted local copy standard protocol for deep reconnaissance. He grimaced. Getting it decrypted without my authentication codes will be the challenge. You would share classified human intelligence with a Virellan commander. Leolith's disbelief was evident. That is treason by any definition. If I'm right about the Netherian syndicate, both our species are being played against each other? Ronan stood testing his newly bandaged shoulder. Seems a reasonable price to pay for the truth. Leolith maintained her skeptical expression. But Ronan noticed her ears had relaxed slightly from their defensive position. Progress. The communication system chirped insistently. You need to answer that, Ronan said. Tell them whatever you need to, I'll follow your lead. Leolith's hand paused over the response button. The Netherian syndicate will have reinforcements. We cannot stay here. Then we get Leolith and move to a secure location. Ronan reached for his damaged armor. Your call, Commander. Their eyes locked, measuring trust against caution, duty against instinct. Finally, Leolith activated the communication link command center secure. She reported crisply. Minimal casualties attackers identified as Netherian syndicate mercenaries. A pause. Sensitive research materials have been compromised, implementing protocol Shadowfall. The voice on the other end responded with obvious surprise. Leolith cut the transmission before questions could follow. Protocol Shadowfall. Ronan asked, deep cover contingency. It gives me 12 hours before check-in is required. Leolith was already moving toward a concealed exit panel. Time enough to either prove your theory or put a blade through your heart. Ronan smiled despite himself. Has anyone ever told you that you have a way with words, Commander? For the first time, Leolith's lips curved into something resembling a smile. Move, human, my daughter is waiting. The maintenance tunnels beneath the Virellan facility twisted like arteries illuminated by strips of crystal-shelled plants that refract ambient starlight, cultivated specifically for this purpose. Ronan followed Leolith through the labyrinth, impressed by how silently she moved, despite her armor. They reached the secure chamber without incident. Inside, several Virellan children huddled under the watchful eye of an elderly caretaker. Leolith spotted them immediately breaking from the group and rushing toward Leolith with surprising speed. For her tiny legs, Leolith scooped her daughter up, whispering something in her native tongue that the translator didn't catch. The embrace lasted only moments before her commander's discipline reasserted itself. We take the Eastern Passage, she informed Ronan, already moving. It leads to a concealed hangar. Your people won't stop us, Ronan asked, noting the suspicious glare from the elderly caretaker. They will not question protocol. Shadowfall. Leolith's tone suggested the consequences for doing so would be severe. The hangar contained 3 small craft shaped like elongated teardrops with swept-back fins. Leolith selected the smallest, its hull adorned with minimal markings. Scout vessel, she explained, activating the entry ramp. Fast, lightly armed minimal tracking signature. Once aboard, Ronan marveled at the organic feel of Virellan technology. The controls seemed grown rather than manufactured, responding to Leolith's touch with fluid precision. Within minutes, they were airborne, slipping through a camouflaged exit into Veltrax Prime's turbulent atmosphere. Where are we heading? Ronan asked, settling into the secondary position with Leyland secured in a specialized harness between them. Neutral territory. The Wacken ridges, Leolith's fingers danced across the control interface remote enough to avoid detection, close enough to access communication networks. Ronan activated his Neuro-Hollow HUD system, wincing as damaged circuits sparked against his skin. Let's see what we've got. The data retrieval was painfully slow. Fragments of intelligence reports reconstructing bit by bit. Leolith maintained their flight path, occasionally glancing at his progress. The Vrikari are an old species, Ronan explained as information appeared. Technological brokers, they supply weapons to over 30 conflicts across 7 systems. War profiteers are hardly unusual, Leolith noted. This goes deeper. Ronan expanded a file showing trade routes and resource extraction permits. They've been manipulating both sides for years. Look at these shipping manifests. They've been delivering identical weapon systems to both human and Virilan forces, then providing intelligence on how to counter them. Leolith's ears flattened against her skull, ensuring the conflict remains perfectly balanced. Perpetual war, perpetual profit. Ronan pulled up another file, geological surveys of Veltrax Prime, but that's not all they want. The initial fighting centered around disputed mining regions. But look at these subterranean scans. The display showed deep, honeycomb-like structures beneath Veltrax Prime's crust. Leolith leaned closer. Her scent, something like cinnamon and ozone, momentarily distracting Ronan. Those aren't natural formations. No, they're not. They're ancient technology buried for millennia. Ronan expanded the image, and the Nitharian Syndicate want exclusive access. What does this have to do with Lylin? Leolith asked, her protective gaze falling to her daughter, who played contentedly with a small puzzle cube. Ronan hesitated. I'm not certain, but these files mentioned genetic compatibility as a key to accessing the buried systems, something about harmonized biological signatures. The implications hung between them. If the ancient technology required genetic keys, a human Virelin hybrid would represent a unique key neither side could produce without cooperation. Their craft suddenly lurched, warning systems flaring to life. Leolith cursed in her native tongue. Pursuit craft, she announced, banking hard to starboard, 3 signatures, Nitharian Syndicate design. Ronan secured his harness. They tracked us. Impossible. Leolith engaged evasive maneuvers, the small vessel diving into a canyon system. This craft has the highest grade stealth systems. The answer hit Ronan with sudden clarity. It's me, my tactical systems. They must have compromised them during the ambush. Understanding dawned in Leolith's eyes, quickly replaced by fury. Your equipment brought them to my daughter twice. No time for that now. Ronan responded, reaching for the weapons console. Can these cannons penetrate Nitharian Syndicate shields? Leolith's professional instincts overcame her anger. Not directly, will need to be creative. The pursuing craft closed rapidly, their superior engines easily matching the Aeroglide Interceptor's speed. Energy weapons lanced past them, superheating the air. Leolith piloted with remarkable skill, using the canyon walls for cover while maintaining their heading toward the distant ridges. Ronan targeted the occasional counterfire, forcing their pursuers to break formation. There, Leolith indicated a narrow fissure in the approaching cliff face. Too tight for their larger vessels. Too tight for ours, too. Ronan observed Leolith's lips curled into a predatory smile watch. She activated a sequence of commands. The Aeroglide Interceptor shuddered, then physically reconfigured its wings, folding closer to the fuselage. They shot through the opening with meters to spare, emerging into a vast cavern system illuminated by the same crystal-shelled plants that refract ambient starlight that lit the maintenance tunnels. Virelin escape route, Leolith explained, reducing speed, mapped but not in any official records. The pursuing craft attempted to follow, but their larger frames couldn't manage the transformation. One clipped the entrance, spiraling into the canyon wall in a satisfying explosion. The others pulled up, seeking alternative routes. That buys us time, Leolith said, guiding them deeper into the cavern network. But they'll find another way in. Ronan deactivated his tactical systems, completely removing the power source. No more electronic breadcrumbs, Leolith chirped from her harness, seemingly enjoying the excitement. Her small hands reached toward Ronan, blue eyes bright with what appeared to be admiration. She likes you. Leolith observed, her voice carrying an unusual quality. The feeling's mutual. Ronan gently touched Leolith's outstretched hand with his finger, earning a delighted trill. She reminds me why this matters, why peace needs a chance. Leolith's expression softened momentarily. For all your violent capability, you have a curious gentleness. Ronan Vale. The use of his name, rather than human, marked a subtle but significant shift. The Vacan ridges rose like jagged teeth against Veltrax Prime's horizon, ancient stone formations, carved by millennia of brutal storms. Leolith guided their vessel into a concealed opening, powering down all non-essential systems once they were secure inside the natural hangar. "We should be safe here temporarily," she said, unstrapping from the pilot's seat. "The mineral content in these rocks disrupts standard scanning technology." Ronan nodded, relieving his stiff muscles as he stood. "Good place for a conversation that neither of our governments wants to hear." They established a makeshift camp in a small chamber adjacent to the vessel. Leolith created a secure perimeter while Ronan set up communications equipment modified to access both human and Virellan frequencies without broadcasting their location. Leolith explored their new surroundings with boundless curiosity, occasionally bringing interesting rocks or bioluminescent fungi to show Ronan. Each time he responded with exaggerated wonder that elicited delighted chirps from the child. "She trusts easily," Ronan observed as Leolith returned from securing the outer passages. "Too easily," Leolith agreed, her gaze softening as she watched her daughter like her father. "Tell me about him," Ronan said quietly, adjusting the communication array. Leolith was silent for so long that Ronan thought she might ignore the question. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of memory. "David Matthews' diplomatic corps. He came to Veltrax Prime 2 years before the conflict began." Her fingers absently traced a pattern on her armor. "He was different from other humans I had encountered. Curious, respectful. He spent months learning our customs, our language." Ronan listened, struck by the vulnerability beneath her controlled exterior. When the tensions began, he advocated tirelessly for continued dialogue. Leolith continued. "We became close during that time. Then Earth recalled all diplomatic personnel. He left without knowing about Lylan. And you never told him communications were severed days after their departure. Then the war began." Lilith's expression hardened. "By the time Lylan was born, our peoples were killing each other across 3 systems. Ronan's communication array suddenly activated, intercepting multiple encrypted channels. We're in accessing both command networks simultaneously." They listened as reports flowed in from both human and Virellan forces. Battlefield updates, supply requests, casualty counts. Ronan isolated specific transmissions, tracing them back to their sources. "There," he said, highlighting a data stream. "These orders, supposedly coming from human high command, show signs of external packet injection." And here, he switched to a Virellan military channel, the same digital fingerprint. "Someone's inserting false intelligence into both sides' communications." Lilith leaned closer, studying the evidence. "Can you trace it?" Working on it, Ronan's fingers flew across the interface. "Got a partial location, orbital platform, geosynchronous above the Meridian Sea. Of Rakari trading post," Leolith confirmed, supposedly neutral territory. Ronan compiled the evidence into an encrypted data package. "We need to get this to people who can act on it. My commanding officer, Director Morrow, he suspected something like this from the beginning. And Virellan High Command," Leolith added. "Elder Thalras specifically, she has questioned the war's escalation patterns." Ronan initiated transmission protocols, then hesitated. "Once we send this, there's no going back. Both of us will be exposed." Leolith met his gaze. "Do you trust your Director Morrow?" With this yes with you and Lylan, Ronan frowned. "I can't guarantee your safety if we return to human territory, nor can I guarantee yours among my people." Leolith's ears twitched a stalemate then. Ronan completed the transmission sequence. "Let's hope they're more reasonable than we expect." Within an hour, they had responses from both commanders requesting secure video communication. Ronan and Leolith positioned themselves so only they were visible to the cameras. Director Morrow appeared first, his weathered face tight with concern. "Peters, we thought you were dead. Your transponder went offline 3 days ago. Situation's complicated, sir." Ronan responded. "Did you review the data package I did? If authentic, it confirms our worst suspicions." Harmon's eyes narrowed. "Your current company raises questions." Before Ronan could respond, the Virellan channel activated. Matriarch Virexa's silver-furred face filled the screen, her age, evident in the white markings around her eyes and muzzle. "Commander Sareth Kai," she said, her translator rendering her words in crisp, formal tones. Protocol Shadowfall was not intended for collaboration with enemy combatants. "With respect, Elder, the evidence suggests the enemy is not who we believed." Sareth Kai maintained perfect military posture. "The Netherian Syndicate have manipulated both sides from the beginning." The two leaders digested this information in silence. "Your evidence is compelling," Director Morrow admitted, "but insufficient for a full stand-down. We need more. The Netherian Syndicate must be confronted directly," Matriarch Virexa stated. "Their deception proven beyond doubt." Ronan leaned forward. "Sir, we can provide that proof, but we need guarantees of safety for all three of us." Three Harmon questioned Ronan, exchanged a glance with Sareth Kai, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. He shifted the camera angle, bringing Auren Kai into view where she played near Sareth Kai's feet. Both leaders' reactions were immediate. Shock registered on Harmon's face, while Matriarch Virexa's ears flattened completely. "A hybrid child." Matriarch Virexa whispered, "Impossible." "Very much possible," Sareth Kai corrected, "and likely the reason for the Netherian Syndicate's particular interest in this region." Ronan quickly explained their theory about the ancient technology and genetic keys. As he spoke, he noted the leaders' expressions shifting from disbelief to grave concern. "Return to your respective commands immediately," Director Morrow ordered. "We'll establish a secure corridor for—" "That won't be possible," Ronan interrupted. "The Netherian Syndicate are hunting us specifically. They've already attacked a Virellan outpost to get to Auren Kai." "Then what do you propose?" Sergeant Harmon demanded. Ronan straightened. "We go to the source. The orbital platform confront the Netherian Syndicate with representatives from both sides present." "Absolutely not," both leaders responded simultaneously. "The alternative is continuing a war based on lies," Sareth Kai stated firmly, "while my daughter remains a target." The communication suddenly degraded static, interrupting the signal. "We're being jammed," Ronan realized, attempting to restore the connection. "Someone's found us!" The cave rumbled as an explosion echoed from the entrance tunnel. "Time's up!" Sareth Kai said, already moving to gather Auren Kai. "They're here!" "Take the rear tunnel," Sareth Kai commanded, thrusting Auren Kai into Ronan's arms. "It leads to an ancient temple complex. The Netherian Syndicate won't expect us to go deeper rather than attempt escape." Ronan secured Auren Kai against his chest. "What about you? I'll collapse the entrance tunnel by us." Sareth Kai was already preparing demolition charges from their vessel's emergency kit. "Go now." Ronan hesitated only a moment before racing down the indicated passage, Auren Kai clinging to him with surprising strength. Behind them, Sareth Kai's voice echoed in sharp Virellan battle calls. The tunnel descended steeply carved steps worn smooth by centuries of use. Ronan's tactical training kept him moving, despite the darkness, one hand against the wall for guidance, the other securing Auren Kai. The passage eventually opened into a vast underground chamber that stole Ronan's breath. Enormous crystalline columns rose from floor to ceiling, each emitting a soft blue glow that intensified at his approach. Ancient glyphs covered the walls, similar to the symbols he'd seen in his unit's intelligence files about Veltrax Prime's buried technology. "It's real," he whispered. A series of explosions rumbled from above. Dust and small stones cascading from the ceiling. Ronan pressed deeper into the chamber, seeking cover among the columns. Auren Kai suddenly squirmed in his arms, chirping urgently and pointing toward a side passage nearly hidden behind one of the massive crystals. Ronan followed her guidance, ducking into the narrow opening just as the sound of pursuit echoed from the main tunnel. The side passage twisted through the rock before emptying into a smaller chamber dominated by a circular platform. 7 crystalline pillars surrounded the circle, each pulsing with different colored light. Ronan crouched behind the entrance, listening to the distant sounds of combat. Auren Kai was holding them off. But for how long? Auren Kai wriggled free from his grasp, toddling with surprising steadiness toward the circular platform. Before Ronan could stop her, she placed her tiny hand on its surface. The chamber hummed to life, the 7 pillars brightening dramatically. Symbols illuminated across the walls and ceiling, flowing like liquid light. A three-dimensional projection materialized above the platform, a map of Veltrax Prime with pulsing nodes indicating locations across the planet. A control center, Ronan realized the ancient technology. It's a planetary network. The sound of energy weapons discharged nearby. Ronan drew his borrowed Virelin pulsecaster, positioning himself between the entrance and Orin Kai. Sareth Kai burst through the doorway. Moments later, armor scorched and bloodied, she sealed the entrance behind her with a final demolition charge, buying precious minutes. "They're right behind me," she reported, breathing heavily. "For carry assault team, at least 6 operatives." Ronan pointed to the activated platform. Orin Kai triggered some kind of control system. Sareth Kai's eyes widened as she took in the illuminated chamber. The ancestor's heart. I thought it was a myth. She joined Orin Kai at the platform, running her fingers over the symbols. "Our oldest legends speak of sanctuaries built by those who came before. Can it help us?" Ronan asked, checking his weapon charge. Perhaps Sareth Kai studied the flowing symbols intently. These patterns, they respond to Orin Kai because she carries both genetic signatures. The legends say only those of dual heritage could access the deepest sanctuaries. The sealed entrant shuddered under impact from the other side. Their time was running out. There, Sareth Kai indicated a sequence of symbols, a security protocol. "It requires blood bonding." Ronan approached cautiously. "What kind of blood bonding?" "The sacred life debt ritual." Sareth Kai's voice carried sudden reverence. "When one life is bound to another through sacrifice and choice, I considered offering it to you after you saved Orin Kai, but there wasn't time. Now, it may be our only chance." Sareth Kai met his gaze, her electric blue eyes intense. "The ritual would link us biologically, create a temporary genetic bridge that might fool the system into granting us full access." Another explosion rocked the entrance. Fractures appeared in the sealed stone. "What does this ritual involve?" "Exactly?" Ronan asked, keeping his weapon trained on the door. "An exchange of blood, an exchange of essence." Sareth Kai's ears flattened slightly, a gesture Ronan now recognized as embarrassment rather than aggression. "It is intimate. Among my people, it creates a bond that transcends physical connection. It means offering everything you are to another." Understanding dawned in Ronan's eyes, a life mating. In human terms, yes. Sareth Kai glanced at the failing door. It would normally be performed with ceremonial preparations, sacred oils, proper witnesses, but circumstances are what they are, Ronan finished. He holstered his weapon and stepped forward. "I'm in." Sareth Kai seemed taken aback by his ready agreement. "You understand what you're agreeing to." "I understand enough." Ronan smiled slightly. "I've been carrying your daughter across a war zone. I took fire meant for you. If that doesn't qualify me for a life debt ritual, what would?" For the first time, Sareth Kai's composure broke completely. Her stern features softened, vulnerability showing through the commander's mask. "There is no undoing this Ronan Vale," she warned, using his full name with deliberate weight. "I don't want to undo it," he replied simply. The chamber trembled as another assault hit the sealed entrance. Orin Kai watched them from the platform, her young face somehow knowing. Beyond her years, Sareth Kai moved with sudden decision. She shed her outer armor with quick, efficient movements, revealing the lithe, muscled form beneath. The intricate patterns in her blue fur became visible natural markings that followed the contours of her body. "Remove your upper garments," she instructed, retrieving a ceremonial dagger from her boot. "The heart must be accessible." Ronan complied, discarding his damaged shirt. The wounds from his earlier injuries stood out against his skin, testament to his journey since finding Orin Kai, Sareth. Kai approached, dagger gleaming in the ethereal light. Her free hand came to rest against his chest, directly over his heart. The touch sent unexpected warmth through his body. "I, Sareth Kai of the Northern Canyons, offer the sacred bond of life to you, Ronan Vale of Earth," she intoned formally. "My blood to your blood, my essence to your essence, my life to your life." She drew the dagger across her palm, then looked expectantly at Ronan. He took the blade, maintaining eye contact as he mirrored her action across his own palm. I, Ronan Vale of Earth, accept this bond with Sareth Kai of the Northern Canyons. My blood to your blood, my essence to your essence, my life to your life. Their bleeding palms pressed together, fingers interlacing. The sensation that flooded through Ronan transcended physical pleasure, awareness, expanded consciousness merging. He gasped as emotions not his own flowed through him, Sareth Kai's fierce protectiveness, her carefully hidden loneliness, her growing affection for him. The chamber responded to their bonding, the 7 pillars pulsing in accelerating rhythm. The planetary map expanded, revealing deeper layers of the network. Ronan glanced over at Auren Kai, who had curled into a small ball near one of the glowing pillars, her tiny body finally succumbing to exhaustion. She had drifted to sleep, perhaps soothed by the gentle humming of the ancient technology. "She's asleep," Ronan whispered. "First time I've seen her rest since this all began." Sareth Kai gazed at her daughter with tender affection before turning back to Ronan. Her body pressed closer against his warmth, radiating between them. "The bond must be completed," she whispered, her voice carrying new intimacy fully. The entrance wouldn't hold much longer. Death waited on the other side, but in this moment, surrounded by ancient light in this temporary sanctuary, nothing else seemed to matter. Ronan's hand traced the markings along Sareth Kai's spine, drawing her closer. "Show me dawn." Light filtered through crystalline formations above, casting rainbow patterns across Ronan's skin. He stirred, slowly, awareness returning in layers. Sareth Kai's warmth pressed against him, her breathing steady in sleep. The events of the night before played through his mind, the ritual, the completion of their bond, the explosive culmination of physical and psychic connection that had sent wave after wave of energy through the ancient chamber. Ronan gently traced the markings along Sareth Kai's shoulder, marveling at how they seemed to shimmer beneath his touch. The bond between them pulsed like a living thing, allowing him glimpses of her dreams. No longer commander and soldier, they had become something new together. Lyland still slept peacefully near the pillar, undisturbed by the night's events. Ronan frowned, suddenly remembering the Vrakari assault team that had pursued them. The sealed entrance remained intact, no sign of the expected breach. The security protocols activated. Sareth Kai murmured, her eyes opening to meet his. "Our bonding satisfied the genetic requirements. The sanctuary recognized us as authorized guardians." Ronan helped her sit up, both of them reaching for discarded clothing. So the Vrakari were denied entry, at least temporarily. Sareth Kai's ears twitched, listening for threats. "The bond worked, Ronan. I can feel your presence in my mind like an echo." "I feel it too," he admitted, adjusting his damaged armor. "Is it always this intense?" A rare smile curved Sareth Kai's lips. "The legends speak of life bonds creating shared consciousness, but I believe them exaggerated." Her hand found his fingers intertwining. "I was mistaken." The planetary map still hovered above the central platform, now revealing new information. Ronan approached it carefully, noting detailed schematics of the underground network spanning Veltrax Prime. This isn't just a security system. He realized it's a planetary defense grid weapon, emplacements, shield generators, communication arrays, all dormant for millennia. Sareth Kai joined him, Lylan now awake and cradled in her arms. The ancestors' technology. This is what the Vrakari truly wanted, and they needed Lylan's unique genetics to access it. Ronan concluded a human-Virelin hybrid, the perfect key. The central platform suddenly pulsed a communication interface, materializing above it. Colonel Harmon's voice emerged from the ancient speakers. "Peters, do you copy? Our sensors detected massive energy signatures from your location." Ronan exchanged glances with Sareth Kai before responding. "We're here, Colonel. Situation has evolved." "That's an understatement," Harmon replied dryly. "We've picked up Vrakari troop movements converging on your position. Whatever you found, they want it badly." "Sir, we've discovered an ancient defense system. The Vrkari manipulated our war to gain access to it." A brief silence followed. "We've been reviewing your evidence." Peters combined with intercepted Vrkari communications. "It's compelling enough that I've initiated direct contact with Varellan High Command Matriarch." Varexa's voice joined the conversation. "The sacred temple complex was believed lost centuries ago. Its rediscovery changes everything. We need extraction." Ronan said, "The Vrkari won't stop coming." Already underway, Harmon confirmed, "Joint human Varellan operation, first of its kind." ETA 30 minutes. Sareth Kai stepped forward. "Matriarch Varexa, the human sergeant, and I have completed the Sacred Life Debt Bond. It was necessary to access the temple's systems." Another waited silence. "Then he is family now?" Matriarch Varexa finally responded. Her translator unable to fully convey the gravity in her tone. "The Council will recognize this bond, as will Earth governments." Harmon added, though, with noticeable hesitation, "Diplomatic protocols for interspecies. Unions were drafted years ago, though never implemented." Ronan felt Sareth Kai's surprise through their bond mirroring his own official recognition had seemed impossible mere hours ago. The conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion that shook the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Vrkari orbital bombardment," Sareth Kai identified. "They're trying to blast their way in." "They must be desperate," Ronan said. "They know we've discovered their manipulation." The control interface suddenly expanded, displaying tactical data. Multiple Vrkari vessels had taken aggressive positions in orbit. Colonel Elder Ronan reported urgently, "The Vrkari are mobilizing their entire fleet. This goes beyond a covert operation now." "Confirmed," Harmon responded grimly. "We're tracking 27 warships in near orbit." "They've dropped all pretense." Oren Kai chirped nervously, sensing the tension. Ronan gently stroked her head, the gesture now familiar and natural. Sareth Kai studied the ancient controls before them. This system was built as a defense network. It could still function. Against an entire fleet, Ronan questioned. "Only one way to find out." Sareth Kai placed her hand on the platform. Ronan covered it with his own, their bonded blood creating a perfect genetic signature. The chamber hummed with awakening power. Across Veltrax Prime, long-dormant structures began to activate defense towers, rising from mountains, shield generators emerging from lakes, communication arrays unfolding from desert sands. Remarkable Matriarch Virexa whispered over the comm, "The ancestors' final gift." The orbital display showed Vrkari ships scattering as planetary defense systems targeted them. Several vessels attempted to jump to hyperspace, only to be caught in gravitational tethers that dragged them back. "Their entire operation is exposed," Harmon noted with satisfaction. "The evidence will reach every world in the sector within hours." A massive energy signature appeared at the temple entrance. The sealed door dissolved into particles, revealing a joint human Varellan extraction team, something unimaginable days earlier. As they prepared to leave, Ronan took one last look at the ancient chamber. "What happens to this place now? It belongs to both our peoples," Sareth Kai said firmly. "Lyland secure in her arms, as does its guardianship." Through their bond, Ronan felt her determination and her hope. A shared vision formed between them, a future where humans and Serenians worked together, where Lyland could grow up without hiding her heritage, where other hybrid children might follow. 3 days later, Ronan stood beside Sareth Kai on the observation deck of the neutral station orbiting Veltrax Prime. Below them, joint peacekeeping forces secured former battle zones, while diplomats from both species drafted preliminary peace accords. The Nitherian syndicate leadership faced justice before an interspecies tribunal. Their centuries of manipulation exposed dozens of similar conflicts across multiple systems were revealed as their handiwork, centuries of bloodshed engineered for profit. "What happens now?" Ronan asked, his arm comfortably around Sareth Kai's waist. Lyland played nearby with building blocks, occasionally glancing up to ensure her parents remained in sight. "We rebuild," Sareth Kai answered simply. "First, Veltrax Prime, then the relationship between our peoples." "And us?" Ronan asked, though their bond already carried the answer. Sareth Kai turned to face him fully, her once stern features softened by the events of the past week. The life debt bond is permanent. Ronan Vale, my life to yours through all that comes. I can live with that. Ronan smiled, drawing her closer. Through their connection, he felt her contentment, her fierce love for Lyland, and the growing depth of her feelings for him. Director Morrow approached datapad in hand. Peters, your new assignment has been approved. Liaison to the Viralan High Command, specializing in joint security operations. Thank you, Sir. Harmon glanced between them, a knowing look in his weathered eyes. First official human Viralan family in recorded history, the diplomats are having a field day. After he departed, Ronan and Sareth Kai moved to the viewport, watching as the twin suns of Veltrax Prime emerged from behind the planet's curve. When I first found Lyland in that cave, I never imagined this outcome. Ronan admitted. Sareth Kai's hand found his, their bond humming with shared emotion. Perhaps the ancestors did. Perhaps that is why they built their technology to require both our genetic signatures. You believe it was destiny? I believe in choices. Sareth Kai corrected her eyes, reflecting the rising suns. You chose to protect a child, not of your species. I chose to trust an enemy together. We chose a different path. Lyland huddled over to them, arms raised in a universal request. Ronan lifted her effortlessly, settling her between them where she belonged. Beyond the viewport, Veltrax Prime turned no longer a battleground, but a promise, a world where a wounded human soldier and a Viralan commander had found something unexpected amid the chaos of war. A family, a bond, and a future neither could have imagined alone.